Please join me in a spirit of prayer and meditation. After our spoken prayer and a time of silence, we will sing together Spirit of Life, hymn number 123, which is also printed in your order of service. This morning's prayer is by Stephen Schick. Spirit of life, God of love, I am entwined in your delicate web of mutuality. The life energy that makes me reach for the sun also moves me to become wrapped like the strong bittersweet vine and the delicate sweet pea around those I meet and love. Here in the tangle of my daily life, I feel your pulse and sense what it means to be alive. Here, twisted and knotted, I thrive, seeking the light that will pull from me the fragrant blossom of love. Spirit of life, help me to experience the beauty of your interwoven and intricate web, that I might always embrace without reserve all those whom my life touches. Amen. Thank you. In mid-November, I preached a sermon called Ask for the Help You Need. It explored how difficult it is sometimes to ask for or receive help. I theorized that perhaps one thing that makes it even harder is that we don't usually hear stories about needing or asking for or receiving help. The stories we hold up are often about grit and determination, stories that celebrate self-sufficiency. But we also talked about the seventh principle of Unitarian Universalism, the interdependent web of existence of which we are a part. We talked about how recognizing our place in that web meant realizing that all our lives we are in need and others are in need of us. I ended that sermon with an invitation for you to share stories of needing, asking for, or receiving help. And I thank our 4 speakers this morning for sharing their personal stories. Hearing them, I know, will help the rest of us, and we do get by with a little help from our friends.
Good morning. I think all of you know that I had a little puppy named Josie, and after the sermon, it was in November, and I had a friend over to help me clean up the backyard. And I thought, well, Josie's getting big enough now. I'm going to let her in the house, and I have a big slider. She can watch us and see what we're doing, and, you know, she doesn't have to be in her cage. So I came in a couple, 3 times to check on her to see if she was okay, and she's there, and she's looking, and she's happy. And then we finished because this particular day there was going to be a nor'easter, and it started getting cloudy and cold, and we were supposed to have torrential rains. So I paid the man in the house, and I checked on Josie, and I called for her several times, because she never comes when I call for her, and she didn't come, and of course I looked in 2 or 3 of her hiding places. She wasn't there. So I went outside frantic, looking. Maybe she snuck out, and the gate was open. And the gate was to the road going out. And I got so upset and so nervous, and I decided that I had to go and find her, because I just knew she was gone. And she's only like this big, and she's black, and she has a white face, though. But to see her in the woods wouldn't happen. So I went outside, and I finally hollered all over the place, and I decided that this wasn't going to work. So I got in my little yellow car, and I started driving her all over the place. I drove up South Highland Road and Moses and Hopkins, and anybody that I'd see, I'd stop and say, if you see a little puppy, please. She had a chip in her ear. And then when I went back in the house, I called the police, and it happened to be that the dog control person was there, and she said, I'm going to come out and help you look for her. So she came out with her police car, and she's looking all over. My neighbor was looking, and I drove around for 2 hours, and I had both windows open. I was getting frozen, and my throat was getting sore, and I was just at the end. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't just let her, if she's out there, I couldn't just let her be out there. How could I do that? But then again, I can't find her. I don't know where to look. So I went in the house, and I just gave up. I just said, there's nothing I can do. Somebody will find her, somebody will see her, maybe the police will see her. And so I decided, I have a little prayer thing in my bedroom that I set up, and I say my prayers every night. And I want to cover all the bases. So I have God, Jesus, Mary, Joseph, Buddha, Krishna, and St. Francis. So I'm praying, and I'm saying, please, please, she's just a little puppy, and I would appreciate if you could help me find her. And while I'm in the middle of a prayer, I hear this. Oh, okay, sorry. Is it still working? Sorry. I hear this thump. Yeah. Thank you. Well, it just happened like that, too. And I'm wondering, what is that noise? So I went out into my area, and by near the front door, I have a stereo, and I have my cushions from summer stuffed in there on the side so she can't get back in there. Well, the Buddha had fallen down and made that thump. And all of a sudden, here comes Josie out from the cushions in the stereo. Yeah, I had such a good nap. I picked her up, and I hugged her, and I kissed her, and I thought, all those things that I was unhappy about with you, forget about them. And so Buddha came through for me.
Glasses on. Hello, my name is Betty Williams, and I have been a member of the Meeting House for 7 years. Some of you who already know me and know that I grew up in Newtown Court, a housing project in Cambridge, Massachusetts, many, many years ago. We learned how to be tough, or at least we thought we were, at a very early age. I also learned independence as a project kid. This attitude of independence stayed with me forever. I got married at 19 and went with my Marine Corps husband, Richard, to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. We both learned the basics of budgeting early on in our marriage. My first allotment check was 3 months late, so we had to make do until December with very little money. I could have asked my parents for financial assistance, but I didn't. Somehow, we got by thanks to Mary Prudence corned beef hash in a can. I always prided myself on never asking anyone for help. That is until the summer of 2014. In June, I was diagnosed with vaginal cancer. The treatment called for 6 weeks of radiation, followed by brachytherapy treatment at Beth Israel Hospital. This procedure consisted of direct implant radiation 2 times a day for 5 days. That summer, I knew I needed help, and for the first time in my 76 years, I asked for it. I drew up a schedule and assigned Monday through Thursday drivers. I saved Fridays for anyone who said, "Is there anything I can do?" It was hot, and each round trip to Hyannis took between 3 and 4 hours. The traffic was terrible, but each driver acted as if this were perfectly normal. I was, and still am, overcome by gratitude for the help given me. After my hospitalization and respite care at a nursing center in Duxbury, I came home to Provincetown, where I went to a friend's house for another week of recuperation. By October, I was on the mend and happy to be home once again. Presently, my health is fine. I am cancer-free, and that is a blessing. However, in retrospect, my biggest blessing is realizing that I am so grateful, even now, to all the members from this meeting house who stepped up and helped me. I was and still am so very grateful. It is hard for someone like me, who always prided myself on being independent, to step up and say, "I need help." However, I was wise enough to know that's what I needed to do, and so I did. Even now, each time when driving home from Hyannis, I remember the summer of 2014 and think gratefully of each driver. Their kindness and gentleness is something I will long remember. They never sighed or complained about the horrible traffic, the waiting for me at the hospital, the overlong trip through Suicide Alley, the backup at the Orleans Rotary, the merging in Wellfleet by the drive-in. All I remember is me sitting there in the passenger seat, quietly being grateful. Therefore, to those of you who pride yourselves on being able to handle anything on your own, step back, think it over, and realize that someday you may need help. When you do, and help is offered, accept it. It may be difficult to do, something you have never done before, but hold out your hand and your heart and say, "Thank you." You will become a better person for having done so. Thank you, everybody.
One of the wonderful things about this Meeting House community is that it extends far beyond our 4 walls. This is true when each of us goes out into the world and acts out the values and lessons that we have learned by being in community together, but it's also true of our Sunday services. The worship service we are having right now will be enjoyed later this week in living rooms across the country. Seasonal members, family, and friends, and especially my mother, tune in each week to see what we were up to on Sundays in Provincetown. The sermons are posted each week on our website, and again, thank you to our videographers that make that happen. By next week, about 30 people will have watched this service, and sermons from 3.5 years ago have been watched up to 300 times. So our ministry here does indeed extend beyond our walls. And I absolutely love it when I hear from folks who watch us at home. One of the people I have connected with in this way is Maris Yah, daughter of Nancy and sister of Rebecca, who are both often here on Sundays. Maris lives in Rhode Island and watches our sermons from her apartment. She is very open about her struggles with mental health, and she deeply appreciates the opportunity to be part of this community from afar. When she watched our service called Ask for the Help You Need, it resonated deeply with her, and she sent me a letter to reflect on it. I have her permission to share her letter as part of this morning's service. I just listened to your sermon about asking for the help you need, she wrote, and let me tell you, you are preaching to the choir. Being involved in the mental health system as a client, I have for a long time been learning how to accept help, even when I was too sick to trust it, and then how to ask for help later on. It's like getting a young child to eat and then even ask for peas at the dinner table. I've also been blessed with the opportunity to learn how to give help as well, which has been very rewarding, to say the least. I've come to realize, and I'm very fond of saying to folks, that one of the nicest things you can do for someone is to let them help you or be nice to you. I have certainly experienced this, especially in my later years, while involved with mental health issues. As a brief example of this, I was thinking one evening that someone close to me had made me feel bad. Then I remembered from the day program at the hospital that I should use the word triggered instead of made. This helped me to own the feeling so that I could do something about it. So I decided to call my mother to discuss the incident. And after talking to her, I felt fine. These techniques were both taught and encouraged, so it was pretty easy to do. This frame of thought and its message being right up my alley, I was really thrilled to hear this sermon. Thanks very much for giving it. If you would like to use this in your January service, please feel free. I would consider it an honor. Love, Maris. So it is an honor on both sides to have Maris's story of asking for help as part of this morning's service. And I, in turn, thank her for the help that she has been to me with her letters, which often include thoughtful follow-up to sermon themes, encouragement of my ministry, and best wishes for my own sister Sarah when she was ill. Thank you, Maris. We are here for each other.
First, I'm sure Betty and Lawrence will understand. When you're asked to do something for 4 minutes, and your first draft is 9 minutes, and every time you keep editing it, it gets longer. So that's it. As humans, we're all driven by the need to nurture some sort of identity, preferably one that's indestructible. It's no surprise then that, for me anyway, asking for help while also trying to maintain such an indestructible identity has at times been very unbalancing. I have 2 brief stories to share about times when someone or something penetrated my own very armored identity, such that help managed to find me. The first was in 1949, when I was 5, chasing a ball between 2 parked cars and out into our street. I ran smack into the right front fender of a moving, shiny, black 1940-something Buick and was thrown backwards, quite dazed. I heard the car screech, and then suddenly a young man scooped me up in his arms, staring anxiously into my own very wide eyes, which were staring back at his movie star-looking face. "You okay, kid?" he said. It was the 1940s, it was Brooklyn, and this 5-year-old knew right away that the young man had to be Italian. They were all good-looking, and their families made the best food. In my 5-year-old way, I also knew that my own eyes were not wide because I'd run into a car or felt scared. You see, my Russian grandmother had never permitted the fathers in our families to hold the children. She said it wasn't right. So it was many, many years before I understood that I, bereft as the young man later drove away, had my first memory-etching experience of being helped, at least beyond my own working mom's overwhelmed best efforts. The problem for me, it turned out, was that at that moment in 1949, I thought the young man's help was, just like in the movies, actually love. Like so many of us, I would spend much of the rest of my life, both as helper and help receiver, struggling to unconfuse my very confused notions of help and love. My next story has two parts. At age 30, I was living for 6 months in Paris. I'd already begun walking with a slower, foot-dragging gait, so I felt very anxious each time I had to cross a major boulevard during heavy traffic, which in Paris is pretty much all the time. At this crossing, panting heavily as I got to the other side, I saw right in front of me one of those classy Parisian cigar shop cafes called Tabacs, and it was displaying a dozen or so very cool-looking walking canes in its window. So jump ahead with me now to age 34, living in Austin, Texas. I'd already been using my Parisian walking cane for 4 years, and using it actually made me feel that all of my issues around needing help had been entirely resolved. Then another armored heart attack happened, oddly during a routine doctor visit. For no particular reason that I was aware of, keywords being aware of, my well-meaning doctor said, "I just read somewhere that a company has come out with a 3-wheeled battery-powered scooter that makes getting around." Of course, I had already shut down my hearing and probably several other brain functions. Before he even finished speaking, can you help me, Jane? Get it? Before he even finished speaking, I wagged my cane and said, "Doc, you know I don't need anything like that." Now, we all know this sort of moment, not just about pride concerning our appearance and abilities, but pride about any notion that we might need something. I had haggled over help many times before this, but unlike most others who, up to that point, had dared suggest to me that something might help, this doctor's identity did not faint at my response. Instead, he calmly said, "Michael, we both know you don't need one, but for example, when was the last time you spent a day down at that zoo in San Antonio?" Zap. He could not have known my passionate love for zoos. To a poor kid growing up in New York City, zoos were examples of what the rest of the real world was like. But I had not, in fact, been to the zoo in San Antonio for countless very lame reasons. Now, this doctor was unwittingly, or probably very wittingly, busting my cover. I was mute and stared at him in silence, because I knew at that instant he was right. Within a couple of weeks, even though I absolutely didn't need one, my very first ever scooter arrived, and the very next day, I drove the hour and a half down to the amazing zoo in San Antonio. Of course, I went alone that time. I mean, one's indestructible identity does want a bit of time to recover. But I did proudly go the entire exhilarating distance in that scooter, as I would many times after with my friends.